Just a brief statement of Max's biography and achievements. It's a bit more, and if you don't know him already, you need to get out a bit more. But anyway, Max is an independent filmmaker and photojournalist who has covered conflict from Africa to Asia and has devoted recent years to an innovative approach to documentary making, honed by his life for more than the past decade in independent Timor-Leste. So, out of these experiences, Max intends to present us with a new approach to documentary making. I hope I'm not setting him up too much by that statement, but anyway, that's, I believe, his work was recognized by UNESCO in 2012 as part of an asset in the World Heritage site, I think, yes. He's director of the Centro Audiovisual Max Stahl Timor-Leste Center. In the past, his footage of the massacre of Santa Cruz in 1991 brought the plight of these people. So you do get out now. That's the main thing. Anyway, enough of my introductions. Max, I'd like to invite you to take the floor, and we look forward to your presentation.
Good evening, and thanks for coming along. The first thing I want to do is to throw you in to a situation, so I don't want to talk too much. Before that, afterwards I'll talk a little bit about the Audiovisual Archive in Timor, what it's for, and what we're trying to do with it, and what we've done so far. This particular film, because I think it is a film, is made with a couple of self-imposed rules. There is no extraneous sound. There is no commentary. There is nothing added and nothing taken away from the images. The editing is done in a minimalistic style and acknowledges the presence of the camera and the passage of time. I say this because all of us who make films are required to fit into boxes all the time. And those boxes can be commercial, they can be programming, television, and so on. I don't criticize that, we all have to do it. But we sometimes forget that when you do that, you can actually end up by distorting, in fact, missing the key experience which you're trying to describe. And one aspect of that which is so hard to describe in that box is uncertainty, confusion. When people are in a situation of crisis, they don't know what's going to happen immediately after the moment when you are living. And that can be a very severe stress. Everybody comes up with, because they have to come up with, their own version, their own theory, their own expectation. Or, for some people, none at all. So in this film, cheated the reality a little bit. I have given you some very basic information in the old style of the 1920s. But I am not trying to explain, I'm trying to throw you into a situation such as it was for those who lived it. So I'll start now. It's an hour, and after that we can talk.
They have experience for a concrete experience, but they simply saw that his friend's family died by the gun. Till now, I hope the place for the refugees in the church.
They have never attacked or threatened your church?
Now, till now, never. But in future, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, the moment is about. But more when they have I don't know situation. But I hope we can to work together, the people here and the government here, local government, to make the situation is very peaceful here. I hope.
Yeah, Red Cross, you understand Red Cross? It's very important. Yeah, you must see in the world, you know, you must see police stop like that. Yeah,
I'm not sure.
yeah, I can't do this Red Cross. Okay, yeah, but it's the Red Cross here. You understand Red Cross? Yeah, I'm fine, no problem. But the people, yeah, you understand? The police.
Why don't you just sit there?
Okay, so.
We understand live streaming of the station, but we shouldn't be doing this. What does it mean?
Quem foi que isso tudo isso? King. King is... Sí. El king. King era os baitara, o milícia, soldado, polícia. Quem hizo tudo isso? Quem foi? Foi a milícia? Que milícia? Quem tem? Soldados? Polícia?
Uniform name, Alpha from Uniform 123, message.
you get all this trust in religion. You don't believe, you don't see what happened. You know, during 23 or 20 years, 24 years, many people was giving my religion, but now they always trust in religion and to keep the security here. They don't realize that Indonesia are the gear. Most of people in Indonesia are still body because of the character of Indonesia. I think that's enough. Even there is a later their driver was killed by Indonesia, but they don't care about it.
International community. Now, all the international community give to us, to our life. We will die for us, like Indonesian soldiers will kill us.
Yeah.
Iya, saya sudah mengenal dari masa tidak lain. Ya, saya beda kawannya apa maka dia bilang suruh malah dari bawah. Kami kehilangan sendiri kalau kami alam karena apa? Oke, berarti masih pasir bahar.
Ini kan tak sengaja deh, lawan ZTV. ZTV. Lalu teman-teman pakai harganya. Ada teman-teman pakai. Yari kan Yari. Dia lalu semuanya dia pati minum apa yang lalu kan saya tidak balik dia lakuin dan umanain padahal di umanain selalu beli sini ada atau tidak masuk ya dia lalu itu nama itu problem ada maksudnya itu lainnya ada orang itu buat mana maksud
What is they saying? What's happening?
Someone told us that we give us the information that the Aotearoa want to attack us tomorrow morning. That's why a lot of people here has run away and we stay here alone. It is a problem, it is rumors and intimidation still going on here. Tempat dipertimbangkan tapi waktunya tidak tepat. Oke, memang tidak tepat. Ini waktunya sudah selesai dan ini harus tempat. Kalau dia kurang, ini sekarang bisa melihat. Kalau dia pusat faltando.
Olha, o que é certo é que muita gente ontem foi para baixo à procura de algum comer, porque já está a carecer aqui de mantimentos. Já está a aparecer bastante. Eu dou mais uma semana, o máximo, que isto aqui pode dar outra vez aquela tragédia de 1978-79.
So the shooting has been had.
Estão as milícias?
Os milícias, os também.
Os entrar, é um soldado?
Os soldados também. Eles estavam espalhados aí.
Cruz-me?
Nas partes de baixo. Nas partes de baixo. Mas é verdade.
O que é que estão a fazer? Estão a tirar?
Vai ser, está a virar aqui 4 minutos também.
Estão dando tiros? The visit of the Security Council representatives, and still Dili is going up in smoke.
certo que nós somos caros civis.
Yes.
What is happening?
Well, the Indonesian armies come out with Thailand and they try to attack people here, and they will attack people down there, and they will burn houses nearby the road, so people are, panic, and they are fleeing from their home. We see out there many people flee to their hills now.
David Jimenez, what is he doing?
No, por favor, deixa. Está interrompido. Ei. Oi. Mano.
Diga, perdão.
Lá embaixo. Marcar um bem informações.
Não tem. Não importa.
Rituais havia mesmo a audiência. O pai veio, já não pode ver nada, ficou dentro da casa, os filhos fugiram. O que é que eles fizeram? Fecharam a porta e queimaram a casa e tudo, com o velho até lá dentro.
Isso vocês para continuar assim, o povo morre de fome, se não morrer das condições, morre de fome. La venta que hecho es monta clara. Presidente bastante Presidente hanno allora stiamo guardando dietro l'altro kita tahu sih di Silaman oh ya kita saya tahu jadi ini tahu tuh Silaman ya
What are they saying? They are talking that now they want to come to prosecute the population here, but because now the young people now they want to defend themselves here, and they want to abstract all the process of action of militia.
Kalau kita coba Indonesia saya
solar harus naik sekali.
Bisa mulai saya dengan ada itu di dunia. Yang mungkin ada kan kami jadi tamu-tamu. Saya tahu deh medan. Kalau harga teh.
Oh, kalian tak makan tiap. Ya, ini hampir
datang dia. Nah, coba lihat kan? Entar boleh baru masalah. Agora em nossa casa se vai ter que é
These bags are for 60 people.
Itu balik ini dia kan. Ini mah dibuat ini oh jadi tiap hasil itu apa ada dalam waktu dari sesuatu itu.
with the attack from here. Over each direction, maybe from to those places.
So where does that leave us?
Sorry?
So what is our situation now?
Well, I think the situation is really bad now, because they surrounded people. You see that when they around in that way, and we can't get out from here. Yeah, we have to try how to get out from here.
How will we do that? How?
We have to try. I don't know exactly yet, but we have to try and do it. Or maybe to move from here to my time. That's the best time. And we have to try to go to avoid from the regions. Location.
Okay.
I'll just make a few comments first, if I may. This is what you might call an assembly. But the minute you turn it into something other than assembly, you need to make more and more decisions which are going to be choices, which usually are informed by information that wasn't present, wasn't available to the people there. And I'd just like to point out that in this film, there are many possible stories. They were real stories at the time, they were immediate stories. People had different theories about what was supposed to happen, or what was going to happen. Shortly after this, I was up in the Indonesians that you saw there attacked. And they killed some people. They killed one person in particular that I saw, and a family. People hid from them, but they fired indiscriminately. And one particular woman didn't run fast enough into the bush, and she was shot with a bullet through the head because she was looking after her husband, who was lame. And the family, when I came across them, was screaming. I could have ended it with that. Terrible, terrible moment. The screaming was the sort of desperate screaming that I have rarely seen. Immediately after that, I was in a place just a bit further up, and some priests arrived from the city down below to announce that the head of the Jesuits in Timor had been murdered by the militia. And there was a rumor. The rumor was of another big massacre in which at least 3 priests had been killed. It was the story of Father Hilario. It was the massacre there. The next part of this film, which I have already sort of put together, goes there. And the people there are trying to find out what happened. They don't know what happened. I'm there before the foreign forces are there. But I didn't want to go to that point because at this point, we didn't know, and people didn't know what was going to happen. Next to me, there was a lady when the priest came, and she said to me, looking down over the town at the Indonesian warships, she said to me, "You know what's going to happen now, don't you?" And I said, "No, I don't know what's going to happen. What is going to happen?" And she said, "You see those ships down there? They will soon open fire on us, because that's what they did last time. That's what they did in 1976. And then I met a policeman, and the policeman was fleeing. He was a Timorese Indonesian policeman, Timorese in the Indonesian police force. He was one of a few of them who fled, carrying their weapons up the hill, because their families were up there. And I asked him, "Well, what is the plan?" And he said, "First, we've been told to get rid of everybody who will go. All the people are to be taken to Indonesia. And then there will be an attack from the sea, from the land, and from the air. And we will, quote, clean the area. In other words, murder everybody." At that point, something happened here in New Zealand. It was at the APEC conference here. We didn't know that at the time. But we saw, or I saw, with some benefit of hindsight, a few days of hindsight at least, that the Indonesians seemed to have stopped. They didn't retreat, they kept on shooting, and I went down into the town once or twice. It was like being inside a video game. People shooting all of a sudden, people hiding, not very many people there at all. Most people fled. But there seemed to be a kind of moment when they stayed, the Indonesians. They didn't advance further, and the militia, who were really a front, didn't appear. And later, with the benefit of hindsight, it seems that what happened here at the APEC conference when Bill Clinton demanded the Indonesians should allow international forces to, quote, help them with security. Seems to have been a turning point. What we now know in investigations afterwards and so forth is that it seems fairly clear there was absolutely no intention to intervene. The Australian forces were not going to intervene. They were sort of there. Some of them were readied, but they had very clear instructions and intentions from what we now know from Australians themselves. They had no intention to come. The decision to come was very late, very late. I don't know this for a fact, of course, but my guess is it was after the APEC intervention. So the question is, well, what would have happened if there'd not been an APEC intervention? As you can see from this selection of images, this was a big operation. The Indonesians had spent a lot of money on this operation. They were burning the whole of Timor. They had organized that every Timorese was supposed to destroy their own house, take their own roof down, wait by the side of the road. They were shipping them out. As you saw on those columns of people, they were shipping them out. In the space of a few days, more than 200,000 people were shipped out. It's a huge operation. So what was it for? Now, we, with the benefit of hindsight, we say, well, it was a scorched earth operation. They were going to retreat, and as the Indonesians had said on a few occasions before, when they threatened Timorese, they said, if you want independence, you must eat stones. So maybe this is what they were doing here. They were making sure they would eat stones, literally. There are many ways you can look at that possibility. There was another thought which was very widely accepted by many people, that they had a plan. The plan was to invalidate the referendum. We have to remember the Indonesian army's experience prior to this of dealing with the UN was what? It was Papua. In Papua, they had successfully, completely falsified, totally manipulated a UN process. And far from being criticized for it, far from getting any return or any serious reaction against that, they all went along with it. In fact, they started to enthusiastically support it. And to this day, Papua is stuck with a supposedly legitimate integration into Indonesia, which everybody knows, including all the UN people know, was completely illegitimate, completely false. I spoke to Benny Wenda just the other day. His father was one of those chiefs brought together to vote. And he said, the UN and the Indonesians had said before the vote, they said, well, what we're going to do now, you're going to get together in this big space here, and when we say Papua, you raise your hands. So it sounded like a perfectly reasonable thing if you were Papuan. Yes, I'm Papuan. Papua, they said, oh, raise hand. Okay, that's it. They voted to join. That was it. Now, this is not a mystery. Everybody knows this. The UN people know it. Everybody knows it. They know it to this day. So that's what the Indonesian army knew prior to this. That's what their experience was. And the Timorese people's experience was like my friend. So, do we know what the plan was? I don't think I know, and I'm not sure if anybody else does. So what could have happened, what might have happened, what was in the thoughts of the people there, and you saw several different ones. You know, you saw those who just didn't want to say who it was because they, of course, had a pretty good idea who it was, but they didn't want to be naming anybody in case that was their death knell, you know. And there were others who were saying, yeah, no, it's okay, we won, that's it, we've done it now, we're sorted, you know. And there were others who were going to fight with a sort of spear against a machine gun. And so on. Each person, each character, each group has its own scenario. And of course, when you make a film, you have to choose, to some extent, a scenario. And usually you inform yourself, you do research, you try to understand, tell people what happened. But that doesn't actually explain what happened for the people who were part of it. It's not a faithful record of what happened. And that's one reason why I think you find that people from inside a situation like that are often silent, somewhat bemused by the accounts of it that are told afterwards or elsewhere. They don't have to be inaccurate, they just don't tell it the way they experienced it. And this is a tricky issue, and so this is an attempt, just an attempt to do that in some way. Now, I did put together, I don't know if we have time for that, so you must tell me, but I did put together a little thing, which was to indicate some of the more conventional news stories. I put in the program, I call this anti-news, because it was not new, it was everybody's version of events competing without any clear conclusion, except in the end, that suddenly the forces actually did arrive. And for me, that was the moment when independence seemed likely. I just come from Yugoslavia, so Srebrenica was in my mind when I was there. And I could have, go into what the journalists were saying, not saying, and so forth. And many of them were saying, when I said I wasn't going to go, they looked at me and they said, well, how are you going to get out of here? But of course, I didn't know the answer to that. But that was the sort of, there were these events are sort of left behind once what happened. And in the archive, what we try to do is to document many different aspects of the birth of the nation of Timor-Leste. We have 4,000 hours on Timor-Leste at the moment. We don't know entirely what the story will be. We don't do what we normally are asked to do if we're trying to fund a movie. Tell people what the movie is. What we do is we try to understand what the themes of significance are, and they don't necessarily, are not all political necessarily. They could be cultural, they could be sporting, they could be all sorts. Things which seem to have important aspects of the ongoing story embedded in them. And then those stories, you try to follow them. There are many different stories. And when you get an opportunity, when there's a moment, when there is an audience, then you make a film. You make it for the local people, whether it's an anniversary, or it could be an issue, or for foreigners who may come. Foreigners do come, even now, obviously not like they did before, and tends to be the same kind of stuff, of course, that you're needing to talk to, because people's interest is fairly superficial. But that ongoing process of trying to document the birth of a nation, which is the broad task that we have set ourselves in the archive, goes back, of course. Partly you're looking research into the materials that we have from before and materials we can find from before. And it also goes forward. We're looking to see what is the key issue here, what's developing, and things develop which you don't expect. And you try to understand or try to keep a material that is relevant to what's important. And if you've done that right, when there's an audience, it could be because of a news story, it could be because of an occasion or a local occasion or an anniversary or whatever, then you will produce a film for that, or an edit for that, or a selection for that. If it's for local people, very local people, they don't really want your edit, to be quite frank. They want to look at as much of the old unedited material as possible. And of course, that's the other side of it. You try to involve other authors in making films. So local people, we work, all the people at the center except me, and occasionally we get money to hire somebody else, or we find a way to work with somebody else from outside. But we're working with the Timorese, and they do a lot of stuff going into the mountains or in the communities and showing material and getting from that material more information that they might then go back and we might then develop and so on. It's a constant process. And outsiders also are engaged in this. I made a list. We have distinguished filmmakers here present who have used some of our material here for the New Zealand audience and others. But we have filmmakers from all over the place: Canada, United States, Europe, France, England, Portugal, etc. And we work with them. We don't, obviously, we do it with the way that people do with archives, but we are creatively involved. And for those who are interested, I brought one or two little films here which are the result of this kind of process of cooperation, should people want afterwards to take them. But we ourselves also look back at things. So I've done a lot of work on, for example, the Santa Cruz massacre. And this is part of a process which has become part of the founding memory of Timor-Leste. This is a key issue. It's a sad irony, in my view, that the very countries that most need a story, a real story, not an invented story, But a founding story are the very countries that don't have it. They don't have access to it. They're split and fragmented by different stories. Every community has a story, of course, many stories. So they can be tension. They can create a lot of tension. We had a crisis in Timor, 2006. It was all about that. It was all about stories. Different communities with different stories, not trusting each other to share in their common story. It really created a disaster. Hundreds of thousands of people fled. And it lasted for years. But we play a part, and during that process, the leaders of Timor-Leste, who were not unaware of this, very, very aware of this, the current president, I happened to be in the building here. Our building then was then taken over by the head of the army police operation that was sent at the end of this to look for the rebels in the hills. And this guy, the commander, said to me, look, I want you to go and show films to the people in these communities, particularly the communities that were involved in this crisis, because they share a story. And that shared story is the foundation of stability, the foundation of an identity. And without an identity, you don't have a democracy, you don't have a shared community, you don't have a nation. So we are part of that process, but we are obviously aware that part of it is myth-making. Part of it is not myth-making, and we certainly don't believe in inventing false myths, if you like. But every story has its mythical aspect. Indeed, most fiction films are based on that. If they don't have that mythical dimension, that part of it that makes the story more than the details that it contains, it's not going to be made. And amongst the many different stories that we have been a part of for international consumption, for different communities, whether they're Brazil, we're working with the Brazilians right now, for example, or Australia, New Zealand, etc., are stories which have now become on a scale where Hollywood is now involved. I just came from Timor, and I was approached there by a producer who has the money apparently to make a film. This is a fiction film based upon a documentary film which we worked with some American filmmakers called Alias Ruby Blade, about Kirsty Sword, who married Chanana Guzmao, the guerrilla leader. Kirsty was with us in the first film that I made in Timor. So this is a big story and a big subject, and I have prepared lots of different thoughts and possibilities on it, but I think it's important to give time to a conversation.
Time to show some things.
Do I?
Just before that, there's one thing I think you've left out of this narrative, Max, and that is your own role. and to me, it perhaps needs to be said, that terrible time just after the referendum when Dili was in flames and AUT was happening in Auckland, there was one and one only journalist, Western journalist, still left in East Timor, and that was you. And you actually left out also that you did have a way of communicating with the outside world. Because one of my, I was following the issue extremely closely at the time. I was engaged with the organising things around AUT. And one of the things I remember most clearly, in fact I probably even recorded it somewhere, was an interview on our radio in New Zealand with Kim Hill, pretty sure it was Kim Hill. And you were in the mountains talking in a low voice, so as not to be heard by the Indonesians presumably, but it was so authentic because there were roosters crowing in the background and everything, and it was really spine-chilling stuff. And obviously you can't say that about yourself, but it was an amazing role, and I think it deserves some credit here.
Well, thank you. To me, I think the most important thing here is the story itself. And the share role that I played in it is a privilege that I feel that I wish to give back on.
The others would have gone away on a plane. You were the only one there.
But it's a role which is important as part of the nation-building process, and that's all I was interested in saying here, because recently I had cancer in 2012, and I was in UK being treated, and the president, who was then Ramazorda, went on TV. I didn't know about this, of course, but in Timor, he went on TV and he said, you know, this is Max Stahl, and this is what's happening, and please pray. And the result was extraordinary. I don't know if it was just José Horta's intervention, but they had made a kind of a totem, if you like, out of me. I became a way, a not cynical way, you know, a totally genuine way for people to remember and to share the story. And I was part of the story, as Reza said. So I became part of that story. But there are many ways in which the government is trying to do that, trying to build that story, to put the sort of Nelson on his column in the consciousness of the people. And I mean, I wore this T-shirt today because this is one of them. You know, we have here Lenny who could translate this for our audience. Yes, well, I know what it says, but basically it is for a T-shirt, one of a number that were made in Timor, which the people who are veterans of the day of Santa Cruz wear. And they wear it especially on the 12th of November every year, when thousands of people every year walk the same road that the massacre, or was massacred in the 12th of November. And you know, if we had time, well, of course we don't, but if we had time, I could show you that, and you'll see, it doesn't matter, the moments of terrible moments, even in the middle of the crisis, 2006, it happened. There was a time when the young guys, the young people were involved in martial arts in the middle of that crisis, were fighting each other. On that particular day of the 12th of November, they went around Dili together, talking about how they shared the sacrifice of that day. When I was filming this crisis, and you know, in this film here, there's some images, it was fairly hairy. I was in the middle of people firing rocks at each other and so on. In some cases, bullets. But both sides were keen to see me, and I wear this hat nearly always, or a hat like it. So it's like a brand, you know, and I turn up, oh, that's... They wanted to, both of them thought they were somehow or other in the tradition of the struggle for independence. Nobody was against it, everybody was for it, except that they didn't agree about exactly how and what. But that meant I was able to go in the middle of that situation and film people being shot, people being throwing rocks and all the rest of it. So that story was underlying and was a potential for bringing people together, even in the midst of that division, that terrible crisis which threatened civil war at a certain point.
What do you think of the way the story's being told through that very expensive National Museum?
Well, the National Museum, of course, is a part, the National Resistance Museum, and indeed, we have been asked by the government to work with them, and they're actually building us a building behind it now. I say us, I mean, it actually belongs to the museum, and we now need to work out how we're going to work with that and all the rest of it, and there are various issues of that sort. But I think the museum is, I think it's beautiful, and it on a certain level, it's going to appeal to people, convey and communicate something important. It's one of the ways in which memory is valued and celebrated. My vision of it is that it shouldn't be the main way, or it shouldn't be the only way. It should be the base, if you like, or a base that we should try to open up and bring the story to the people, not just wait for the people to come to the museum, because of course the vast majority of Timorese will never go to the museum. They feel intimidated by such a place, even if they could go there. And engaging in a debate, in a dialogue, and a debate is the wrong word, in a process of communication with different communities, it changes your own perception and understanding all the time, at least does mine. And we have many other, apart from the struggle, we have many other concerns, interests. The memory is, of course, a key and a core issue for us. We continue to work on how people looking for the remains of the dead, or scattered all over Timor, collecting, and the processes and ceremonies, both traditional and Catholic, which surround that. And people value that. There's a kind of a part of a memory which is symbolic, you know, like a museum. I mean, how many people actually go to the museum? Probably a tiny number in any country. But I bet you the vast majority of them would be very offended if they didn't have a museum. They want there to be a museum. A museum is part of showing that we have a history, that we have a story. And even if you never go there in your entire life, you definitely want it there. So it's important that it should look good. It's important that it should be there. It's like a monument in itself. And that process we work with. I mean, I talk at the museum a fair bit. I work with them. But most of what we do is not there. Most of what we do is in the communities or, on the editing table. We work with the French a lot because the French National Archive supported us from 2005, and they were the ones who proposed us for registration by UNESCO in their non-physical main program, which is called the Memory of the World. So we are a kind of Ayers Rock, if you like, of East Timor, a non-physical one. And that in itself is a part of valuing something. I don't know how many people are going to look at the 450 hours we have in the French National Archive, even if they could. But the fact that it's there is important not just to Timor, it's important to UNESCO apparently, to people around the world. And the contribution of people in New Zealand and in Australia and around the world in the process is part of that story, is one of the reasons why they registered it. Because the story that they were registering was something on the cusp of a change in the relationship between news and the public. This story of Timor-Leste is probably the first case of a country achieving its independence through audiovisual means, actually. And why, how did these small number of guerrilla fighters that I met in the mountains manage to make their voice heard? They built museums where I met with them in East Timor. I didn't. Nobody, they did it on their own initiative. Miles from the nearest road, there's a museum right now built where I met with the guerrillas in the mountains in 1991. Because the people there, the communities who never watch TV, at least not that sort of TV, see it as the breaking of the circle of silence that was surrounded. And what was that circle? It was the thing that stopped them in communicating with people like yourselves, people outside who shared their values. And through that shared statement and demonstration of values, people around, small groups of people around the whole world were able to create a movement. And that movement was able to eventually overturn the diplomatic, so-called strategic, interest-based alliances which had consigned East Timor to the disposable bin. And by humanizing that bin where these people were consigned to, suddenly, not suddenly, but over a process of time, with the cooperation of people, active people, engaged people all over the place, the story changed, and the story with the story changed the reality of politics. And the cynical declarations of people like the Australian ambassador in Jakarta in '75, who talked about it being sad but real politics, that they had to consign East Timor to the dustbin, because that's what everybody else does, was exposed as not only immoral and lacking in the basic values which most Australians would wish to claim as the basis for their story. But also, not a realpolitik at all. Very unrealpolitik, because he lost. And that, to me, is the story that is unique about Timor and tells a story much bigger than Timor itself. That ability for a group of people in extreme situation to communicate through their humanity to people around the world, and through that to transform the struggle. Timor didn't win with guns, even though they kept on to the end with a few of them. It won by communication, by extremely skillful use of their story.
Obviously, it remains for me to just thank Max for a memorable, punning on the term, presentation. And thank you very much. If you wish to have any further discourse with him, I'm sure he's ready and willing for that. Thank you. It's okay.
Pleasure.